Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our celebration of Sri Krishna's birthday. We will start with chanting and reading of the English meaning of chapter 12 of the Bhagavad-Gita. That will be done by the Sarada Nuns. That'll be followed by a talk by Dr.Ashit Maitra. He'll be sharing a PowerPoint presentation with us as well. And then we'll have a talk by Pravrajika Sridharaprana. So welcome, and we'll get this underway.
We start with the first of the meditation on Gita, the first verse. Those of you know, please.
Alice, இது நாட்டுக்கு இப்படி விளையாட்டு கொடுக்குறாங்க.
Om Akhaya Pradibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Dhritam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitamritavarshiniim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatvam Anusandadhami Bhagavad-Gita Bhavadveshinim. Arjuna Uvacha Evam Satata Yuktaye Bhaktasvam Paryupasate Ye Chapyaksharam Avyaktam Tesham Ke Yoga Vittamaha. Arjuna said, those devotees who ever steadfast thus worship you, and those also who worship the imperishable, the unmanifested, which of them is better versed in yoga? Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Maya Veshamano Yema Nitya Yukta Upasate Shraddhaya Parayo Vedaste Me Yukta Tamamataha. Those who fixing their mind on me worship me ever steadfast and endowed with supreme Shraddha or faith, they, in my opinion, are the best versed in yoga. Etvaksharamanirdesham avyaktam paryupasate sarvatra gamachintyam cha kutastham achalam dhruvam. But those who worship the imperishable, the indefinable, the unmanifested, the omnipresent, the unthinkable, the unchangeable, the immovable, the eternal. Samniyam mendriya gramam sarvatra samabuddhayaha te prapnuvanti mameva sarvabhuta hite rataha. Having subdued all the senses, even-minded everywhere, engaged in the welfare of all beings, verily they reach me only. Kleshodhikatarastesham avyakta sakta chetasam avyakta hi gatir dukkham dehavadbhiravapyate. Greater is their trouble whose minds are set on the unmanifested. For the goal of the unmanifested is very hard to be reached by the embodied. Etu sarvani karmani Mayi sanyasya matparaha ananyenaiva yogena mam dhyayanta upasate. But those who worship me, resigning all actions in me, regarding me as a supreme goal, meditating on me with single-minded yoga. Teshamaham samudharta Mrityu samsara sagarat bhavami nachirat partha maya veshita chetasam. To those whose mind is set on me, verily I become erelong, O son of Pritha, the savior out of the ocean of the mortal samsara. Mayeva mana adhasra mayi buddhim niveshaya Nivashishyasi mayyeva atha urdhvam na samshayah.
Fix your mind on me only. Place your intellect in me. Then you shall no doubt live in me alone hereafter.
Atha chittam samadhatum na shaknoshi mayi sthiram abhyasa yogena tato mamichhaptum dhananjaya.
If you are unable to fix your mind steadily on me, then by Abhyasa Yoga, seek to reach me, O Dhananjaya.
Abhyasepya samarthosi matkarma paramo bhava madarthamapi karmani kurvan siddhimavapsyasi.
If you are unable to practice Abhyasa also, be intent on doing actions for my sake. Even by doing actions for my sake, you shall attain perfection.
Athaidadapya shaktosi kartum madyogamashritah sarva karma phalatyagam tada kuru yadatmavan.
If you are unable to do even this, then taking refuge in me, abandon the fruits of all actions, being self-controlled.
Shreyo hi jnanam abhyasat jnanadhyanam vishishyate dhyanat karma phalatyagas tyagat shantiranantaram.
Better indeed is knowledge than blind abhyasa. Meditation with knowledge is more esteemed than mere knowledge. Better than meditation is the renunciation of the fruits of actions. Peace immediately follows renunciation.
Adveshta sarva bhutanam maitra karuna evacha nirmamo nirahankara samadukha sukhakshami.
He or she who hates no creature and is friendly and compassionate towards all, who is free from the feelings of I and mine, even-minded in pain and pleasure, forbearing.
Santushta satatam yogi yatatma dhrida nishchayah mayi arpita mano buddhir yo madbhakta same priyah.
Ever content, steady in meditation, self-controlled, and possessed of firm conviction, with mind and intellect fixed on me. One who is thus devoted to me is dear to me.
Yasmano drijate loko lokano drijate chayah harshamarshya bhayodvegair mukto ya sachame priyah.
One by whom the world is not agitated, and who also cannot be agitated by the world, who is freed from excessive joy, intolerance, fear, and anxiety. Such a one is dear to me.
Anapeksha shuchir daksha udasino gatavyatah sarvarambha parityagi yo madbhakta same priyah.
One who is free from dependence, who is pure, prompt, unconcerned, untroubled, renouncing every undertaking. One who is thus devoted to me is dear to me.
Yo na hrishyati na dveshti na shochati na kankshati shubha shubha parityagi bhaktiman yah same priyah.
One who neither rejoices nor hates, nor grieves, nor desires, renouncing good and evil, full of devotion. Such a one is dear to me.
Samakshatrau cha mitre cha tatha manapamanayoho shitoshna sukha dukkheshu samasanga vivarjitah.
One who is the same to friend and foe, and also in honor and dishonor, who is the same in heat and cold, and in pleasure and pain, who is free from attachment.
Tulyanindastu mauni santushto yena kenachit aniketa sthiramatir bhaktiman me priyo naraha.
to whom censure and praise are equal, who is silent, content with anything, homeless, steady-minded, full of devotion, such a person is dear to me.
एतु धर्म्यामृतमिदं यथोक्तं पर्युपासते श्रद्धधाना मत्परमा भक्तास्तेतीव मे प्रियाः.
And they who follow this immortal dharma, socially stabilizing and Atman revealing, as described above, endued with Shraddha, and regarding me as a supreme goal and devoted, they are exceedingly dear to me. Thus ends the 12th chapter designated the way of devotion.
So next item is we'll be having a talk by our very dear friend and longtime member, Dr.Ashit Maitra. And he's going to talk about the universal significance of Sri Krishna. So just give me a moment and I'll get him set up. All right, you're ready. Please go ahead, Dr. Maitra.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Namaha. Pranams and good morning to all of you. I really feel very privileged to be talking on this Bhagavad-Gita today. It makes lighter the depth that we have to our ancient rishis. So it is a Mahayagna as part of our Rishi Rina. But today we do so in the guise of discussing whether Lord Sri Krishna, the Purushottama, is the face of a universal religion. Purushottama transcends the perishable Prakriti and is even above the imperishable Purusha. So we got to take Sri Krishna very seriously, Robert. But before getting serious, let us consider the religion's main aspects. The central aspect of all religions is universal because they are all about spirituality. But apart from this fundamental similarity, each religion brings with it its unique tradition, rituals, mythology, and philosophy. They're different for each religion. Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, they claim to be universal religion because large numbers of people all over the world follow them. Even if each of these religions gives one prescription to cure all ills, offers one size to fit all. A religion can only be a universal religion if it appeals to and caters for each human mind. It's very difficult to reach each human mind, but Swami Vivekananda describes all human minds into 4 different groups. According to Swamiji, some like to do work, being physical in this material world. Some by nature are artistic and attracted to the sense of beauty, love, emotions. Some are keen to analyze their mind, to have control over the mind. And some others like to use the intellect even beyond the possibilities of all human philosophies. So these are the 4 different kinds that Swamiji described. Now the question is, does Hinduism accommodate the spiritual aspirations of all these minds? Today, we look to Lord Krishna for the answer. Sri Krishna says yes. Broadly, there are 2 seemingly opposite paths. As spoken by me of old, O blameless one, there are in this world 2-fold paths. The path of knowledge for the Sankhyas and the yoga of action for men of action. Now, a little bit about the Sankhas, the way the Sankhas operate is to take note of the impermanence of life, and okay, this is the Shankar scheme in here. Purusha and Prakriti, these are the unmanifested Prakriti and Purusha. Now, once the Prakriti is manifested, is the Ahamkar that gives the diversity. So if you can actually collapse all these diversities of life, if we can suppress the Ahamkar, so it goes back to Buddhi, and the pure Buddhi, pure intellect, is where the Purusha is fully reflected on. This is where the bliss of Purusha can be directly enjoyed. So the way the Sankhas operate, that they know that the ego, that I am the doer, prevents us from enjoying our eternal spiritual nature. And because doing work creates a chain of bondage to this world, so the Sankhas thought it is best not to do any work at all. No, Sri Krishna says, it is not a good idea. Because Sri Krishna says to Arjuna, no one indeed can exist even for a moment without performing action. For everyone is helplessly driven to action by the gunas of nature. But Sri Krishna agrees, so he tells to Arjuna, works other than those done as yajna, that is duty, selfless or selfless offering. So any work done other than as yajna bind human beings to actions. Therefore, O Arjuna, do your duty efficiently as a service, free from attachment to the fruits of work. Free from desires, the mind and senses under control, renouncing all proprietorship, doing mere bodily action, one does not incur sin. Sin means impediments to realization of God. So, Sri Krishna continues, thy right is to action alone, but never to its fruits. So, let not the fruit of action be thy motive, nor thou be attached to inaction. So the question now arises that if what could be the motive force to do work if not for the fruit of action, because that's the one that drives us to action. So Sri Krishna suggests a good source of motivation. And the good source of motivation, so Sri Krishna says, O Dhananjaya, established in union with divine, perform action, casting off attachment, and being evenly balanced in success and failure. So in here, the path of devotion is suggested. Devotion for the union with God. But later on, it's clarified more expressly. It says, O son of Pritha, that supreme person in whom dwell all beings, by whom this universe is pervaded, is attainable by one-pointed devotion alone. So, Sri Krishna urges Arjuna, O Arjuna, whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer as a sacrifice, whatever charity you give, whatever austerity you undertake, do all that as an offering unto me. Because neither by study of the Vedas, nor by austerity, nor by charity, nor by sacrifice can I be seen as you have seen me. This is just after Arjuna has seen the universal form of Krishna. So Krishna continues, but by single-minded devotion alone, I may in this form be known in essence, seen in reality, and also be reached, O destroyer of foes. So we note from here that God's grace is paramount, which Sri Krishna also expressly says. Sri Krishna says, giving up all dharmas, take refuge in me alone. I shall free you from all sins, grieve not. you'll attain the eternal, immutable state through my grace. Therefore, Sri Krishna urges, casting aside the mental fever, O Arjuna, surrendering all actions to me, with your mind focused on the self, and getting rid of longing and the sense of mind, do your fight. Here, the meditative path is also hinted, but of course, elaborated very much later. Controlling all the 9 doors of the body, the abode of the consciousness, focusing the mind on the heart and prana in the cerebrum, and engaged in yogic practice. So this is the gist of the meditation. So we can see in here, there are several paths already several paths already mentioned in here. So Sri Krishna says, some through meditation behold the self by their pure intellect, others through Sankhya Yoga, or the knowledge, yoga of knowledge, and others through the yoga of action. So all these 4 yoga are mentioned here. But Sri Krishna goes on and opens up some more pathways. Sri Krishna says, others, again, not knowing thus, worship as they have heard from others. They too certainly overcome death by their firm faith to what they have heard. Obviously, sincerity is the key issue here. And within the path of knowledge, Lord Krishna also accepted many different streams of practice. For example, Sri Krishna says, some worship me by knowledge sacrifice. In here, that is interesting because knowledge sacrifice is seeing the self in all. So effectively sacrificing the knowledge of God itself. So others worship the infinite in one. It is a non-dual concept. As the master of all, that's the dualistic concept, and as a manifold devas, as a polytheistic concept. So there are many others opening up in here. Sri Krishna continues, others offer their wealth, their austerity, and their practice of yoga as sacrifice, while the ascetics with strict vows offer their study of scriptures and knowledge as sacrifice. Here charity of wealth, tapas, Raja Yoga, scripture studies with control of senses, discriminative knowledge of the Vedas, they are all mentioned. Sri Krishna's acceptance of flexibility in practice is beautifully illustrated in the following slokas. And these were also beautifully sung as always by the Matajis this morning. Therefore, I read, therefore, focus your mind on me alone and let your intellect dwell upon me through meditation and contemplation. Thereafter, you shall certainly come to me. Okay, that's normal. If you are unable to meditate or focus your mind steadily on me, then seek to reach me, O Arjuna, by practice of other spiritual discipline or sadhana of your choice. If you are unable even to do any sadhana, then be intent on performing your duty for me. You shall attain perfection just by working for me as an instrument, just to serve and please me without selfish motives. If you are unable to work for me, just surrender unto my will with subdued mind and renounce the fruits of all work. So that is an ample demonstration of the universality concept which is inherent in Hinduism. Sri Krishna gave some more interesting illustration. I just read some of them. In whatever way people worship me, in the same way do I fulfill their desires. In all ways, O son of Pritha, it is my path that people tread. In whatever manner humans approach me, I favor them in that very manner. In all ways, humans follow my path. And whichever form of a deity the devotees want to worship with faith, that very firm faith of theirs I strengthen. In another occasion, he said, endowed with steady faith, they worship that deity and fulfill their wishes through that deity. Those wishes are indeed granted only by me. Even those devotees who worship demigods with faith, O son of Kunti, they too worship me, but in an improper way. So may we, undeserving though we may be, may the grace of Purushottam be bestowed on all of us. Hari Om Tat Sat.
Thank you very much, Dr.Ashit Maitra. And reminds us of Sri Ramakrishna, doesn't it? That like Sri Krishna, Sri Ramakrishna also would take us from where we are, find out what our temperament is, what appeals to us most, and we then proceed accordingly. Now we'll invite Pravrajika Sridharaprana to give her talk on Sri Krishna, the embodiment of felicity.
Om Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanura Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. The divine son of Vasudeva, the destroyer of Kamsa and Chanura, the supreme bliss of Mother Devaki. I salute that Krishna who is the teacher of the world. Sri Krishna is the greatest luminary that has brightened the firmament of India. He is the 8th in the line of the 10 avatars of Vishnu, and he is the 8th child of Devaki, and he was born on the 8th day of the dark fortnight and on the 8th month of English calendar. Generally, his birthday falls during August, very rarely in September, but generally in August. So everything is 8 about him. It's amazing, everything is 8. And so, Sri Krishna is just not a product of history. Rather, when the Supreme Brahman walks and moves on our planet, history is created. And Srimad Bhagavatam speaks of him as Sri Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. Sri Krishna is God himself. As for the reason of his advent is concerned, he himself gives in the Bhagavad-Gita, says that whenever the virtue declines and the adharma, evil reigns, then I embody myself for the protection of the virtuous, and for the destruction of the wicked, and for the establishment of dharma. I come into being in every age. Now, the Bhakti school of Vedanta, the teachers of Bhakti school of Vedanta have something more to tell us about it. They say that God is omnipotent, Sarva Shaktiman, and he is truth-willed. His resolutions are always true. So in that case, he can easily, just by his will, can destroy the evil and then lift the good ones. But then why should he embody? So they say, under the pretext of relieving the earth of its burden, but really, in order to make himself available to us, to take refuge in him, he incarnated on the earth as Sri Krishna. This is said by Sri Ramanujacharya in his introduction to Bhagavad-Gita. He thus became visible object for the sight of all people, did divine actions that captivated the minds of all high and low. He vanquished host of demoniac persons. He spread soothing happiness over the entire world with the ambrosia of his glances and speech, conveying his boundless compassion, friendliness, and love. The Sri Krishna and the Srimad Bhagavatam describes this personality of Sri Krishna. Even as an young boy, he was not only precocious in physical might, but also in his intellect and spiritual stature. He was the very home of physical beauty and charm, incarnation of kindness and affection, but at the same time, intolerant towards injustice, hypocrisy, and conceit. He has left an indelible impression on the Indian thought, culture, and history. His personality has pervaded It's art, literature, sculpture, painting, music, dance, everything. I think if we subtract Krishna, very little will be left in Indian culture. So pervasive is his personality. The scriptures call him Yogeshwara. In the Gita, he says, Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna. So Yogeshwara is a term. That is, he is the yogis of yogis, yogin of yogis. This is a term not used for any other incarnation. He was like a multifaceted diamond. To the elderly women of Vrindavan, he was their darling son. To the gopis, he was Cupid. To the saints and sages, he was Yogin of yogins. To the kings, he was the king of kings, though he never ascended the throne. To the wicked, he was death itself. And to the young folks, he was their playmate. Krishna, as his very name suggests, Kashati Sarvanya Sa Krishna. He who attracts all beings to himself. That is the meaning of Krishna. He accepted love of all types, physical as well as spiritual. Even love in the form of jealousy, hatred, and transformed them. He was love in the form of felicity, Ananda. Whoever came or entered into contact with him, whatever may be the nature of it, the contact, they all got transformed into his nature, namely Ananda. Today, I would like to dwell on some of the childhood aspect. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, an incarnation of God is like the udder of a cow. What we need is milk, and that comes from the udder of the cow. So if you want to seek Ananda, felicity, bliss, then you have to search in an incarnation. And as I told you, Sri Krishna has different aspects. Today I'm going to deal with baby Krishna, because many of them are celebrating Krishna Jayanti today and some tomorrow. So it'll be good for us to dwell in this elixir of Krishna's childhood. We all know that Krishna was born in the prison because his uncle, Devaki's cousin brother, Kamsa, heard a celestial voice telling that the 8th son of Devaki will be his slayer. So Kamsa imprisoned both Devaki and Vasudeva, and for 8 to 10 years they have been waiting in expectation that their Redeemer would come. And finally, he came. And the moment he was born, he revealed himself as Narayana, God himself, to make them know that I have come here. I'm here. It's just a matter of time. I'll be saving you. And he filled their hearts with bliss. They were so happy, but the fear of Kamsa was there. And according to his instruction, he was exchanged. He was taken to Gokula, where Nanda, one of the friend of Vasudeva, his wife Yashoda, had given birth to a baby girl, and the babies were exchanged. It was all according to his instruction. And then Krishna was brought, and we know when Kamsa came, because Kamsa had killed 6 children of Devaki, and the 7th was, by the grace of God, the fetus was completely taken away, changed to Rohini's womb. So that was miraculous. It was the working of Mahamaya. Anyway, the 8th child, Kamsa, came, and when he saw that it was a girl baby, he didn't bother. He took and went to kill the baby, holding the feet. And the little girl, very smart as she was, she flew away and revealed herself as an 8-armed goddess, Durga. And she said, stop doing all these atrocities. Your killer is somewhere else. So Kamsa was surprised. He knew human beings tell lies. And he says, even gods tell lies. Strange. Anyway, that did not allow him to have any compassion over Devaki and Vasudeva. So still they had to continue the imprisonment for 11 more years. So all this 11 years, they held to the bliss that Sri Krishna gave to them in their heart. And they were waiting for the day they would be embracing their son. So this is the bliss that Devaki, the biological mother of Sri Krishna, got. And what about the foster mother, Yashoda? We don't know what austerities she did. She was immersed in the bliss of her child for 11 years. Till he went to Mathura, she enjoyed the maximum bliss of Krishna, every day seeing so many aspects of Krishna playing. And she was filled to the brim with the bliss celestial. And there are many mothers for Krishna. One was the demoness, Putana. When Kamsa came to know that Krishna is somewhere else, he wanted to find out. So he summoned the demoness, Putana, and asked her, within 10 days, whichever child is born in whole kingdom, just kill them. So she went on this project. And it took 6 days for her to come to Gokula. 6 days, baby Krishna was lying in the bed. And when the demoness came, he closed his eyes tightly. Of course, 6 days, baby, naturally, it will close. But the mystics say there was 2 reasons. One is the baby Krishna was very angry because she has been killing all his friends. That is, all those who were born during his time. They are his friends. So he was very unhappy. So he didn't want to look at her. The other thing is, you see, when children are very naughty, we smack them. Parents have to deal with them hardly. But then really they don't want to. They feel sorry for it. So same was with Krishna. Putana is also one of his created being. So naturally, he has to punish her for her wickedness. But he is also the father of the universe. So it was very hard for him. So he closed his eyes. And when Putana took him to her breast, he not only drank the poison, but he just sucked the very life breath. So here, Shri Krishna could have transformed her, but he completely took away the life force from her. Why? Because that body of Putana was tamasic. It was an impediment to enjoy the pure bliss. So he gave her immediate mukti. So this is the grace of Krishna. Even for a person who had come to kill him, to that woman, he gave mukti. And what to speak of we who give our love to Sri Krishna? So it needs nothing to tell. We will be having his grace. The another mother, it's a beautiful, I'm just speaking from the Bhagavatam. Another one in episode is the fruit seller. Now the boy Krishna was some 3 years old, going around playing, very naughty, and people are busy with their household, all are busy. And Yashoda is the very busiest person because she did everything with her own hands. Though she was the chieftain's wife, she had a lot of people to do, but she took it on her own hands, serving Krishna. So she was very busy. And here a fruit seller comes. And Krishna is a very important person. He has to do everything for himself. So he just goes to her and asks for fruits. She said, I don't, give me money, give me something. I'm here to sell the fruits. Why do you want to ask? Nobody asked me money or anything in return. Everybody give me free. My mother gives me, all my other mothers who are there, they all give me free. Why are you demanding money? She said, this is my livelihood. You have to give me something. So he runs to the store and takes 2 handful of grains, paddy, and comes all the way pouring it down. By the time he comes and opens his hand, hardly there's anything, just a few grains sticking to his hand. This is not the price for my fruits. And he's perplexed. What am I to do? Then the lady looks at Sri Krishna and she's charmed, and the motherly affection in her heart rouses. And she says, look, I'll give you all this fruit on one condition. You call me mother and sit on my lap. Then all these fruits are for you. And Krishna says, that's nice. Just call her mom and sit on her lap, and all these fruits will be mine. How wonderful. Just he looks at hither and thither, nobody is there, all are busy. Just he make sure that nobody is, and slowly he goes and sits on her lap and looks at her face. The lady is completely transported into a different realm. She's full of bliss, horripilation throughout her body. And the hairs on her hands are standing, tears are rolling in her eyes. She's charmed. She takes the little face of Sri Krishna in her arms and kisses him. And pours out, gives all the fruits, as much as he could hold, he holds it, and just one run, starts running. Just you can imagine, these are for object of meditation for us. Today is Krishna Jayanti, birth of Krishna. Imagine how beautiful it will be. Think of the little boy running with all the fruits. Some of the fruits are falling, he's grabbing it and running. So as long as Krishna was, she could see him, she was there. And once she went, she took her empty basket and went, all the way meditating and pondering her luck. What a grace that I'm an ordinary person. I am filled with so much joy. What did I make to get it? So she was pondering in this way and going. Suddenly she felt heavy. What's this? Why is my basket so heavy? And she brought it down to see the whole basket was full of precious stone, gems, and jewels. Then she says, oh, Krishna, you cannot delude me like this. What need have I of this wealth when I am to the brim? You have filled me with joy. And she just threw it and went away. Pravrajika, that is, nobody knows where she went. This is the result of love of God. You cannot have two things. Jahan Kam, taha nahi Ram. Jahan Ram, taha nahi Kam. Where is Rama? There is no desire. And where there is desire, there is no Ram. So that's a saying. So she was filled with the joy. This is the gift of Sri Krishna to whoever calls him as his child. And this is his vrata, his promise. In Ramayana, Sri Ramachandra says to Vibhishana, this is my word. Whoever calls me once, I am thine. I protect him. I reveal myself. I give myself fully to him. This is my promise. See how he's keeping further. And there were some Brahmins who were doing sacrifice. Now Krishna is a bit old, big boy in the sense 8, 9 years old. They were going to the forest to graze the calves and all that. Elders went with the cows, and young boys like him, they took the calves and went to graze in the Vrindavan forest. The boys, his friend said, Krishna, we are terribly hungry. Do something for it, please. Okay, they were quite away from Vrindavan. If not, they could have gone and eaten some chesli, but they were quite away. So he said, Krishna says, okay, there is in that particular village some Brahmins engaged in doing Vedic rites. They are very devoted to Vedic rites. So go to them and on my behalf, tell them that I am asking some food and drink. So they went. But the Brahmins were such conceited fellows. They either heard them, because if they hear, they have to answer. They don't want to answer. They pretended as if they didn't hear. And the boys were disappointed by their response. So they went back and they reported it to Krishna. Krishna said, okay, they're two big people. They won't bother to about us. Okay, you go behind the premises where the women are cooking, you go and ask them. They are devoted to me. You ask them, they will give. So the boys went and introduced themselves and said that Krishna and Balaram, the elder brother, they are in the vicinity and they have asked for some food. Would you please be gracious enough to give? And hearing the name of Krishna, the women were so filled with joy. They said, how wonderful. At last we have got this, because they were very far from the Vrindavan. They never had the chance of going and seeing the divine actions of Krishna. So they said, by great good luck or by his own mercy, Shri Krishna has called us. Let's go. And they took all the offerings which they had made for the gods and ran towards them. And their men, they obstructed, still they just brushed. So when the call comes for something higher, or you ignore everything, nothing stands in your way. When the call is there, you straight respond to it. See, these women were the least bothered about those men, their husbands. They just brushed aside, they went. And they fell at his feet and offered all. And Shri Krishna was very pleased with them, and they were full of joy. See, they were to the brim. They were seeing that glorious boy, the Parabrahma in the form of boy, dark hue, bluish color, with the yellow cloth, with the wildflowers garland on his neck. And it was such a charming sight. And they said, now we have renounced everything. We have brushed aside our family and come. We can't go back. Do whatever you want with us. They were ready to renounce the world and go as hermits. But Shri Krishna says, no, you go back to your families and help your husbands to fulfill their yajna, the sacrifice. And you have attained the supreme. What? The supreme bliss you have attained. Meditate on my doings and ultimately you will reach. So this is the grace of Shri Krishna to the women who were contemplating on his deeds. They were ordinary women. They never knew any scriptures. And these Brahmanas later they realized their folly. And they said, blessed are our women. Even if they are not scholars or educated, they could love the Lord. Even after repenting, they didn't go to see Krishna because they were afraid of Kamsa. See how many bondages are there to bind us. The Lord was there. The proximity was so close to them, but yet they didn't make use of that proximity. So that shows no yajna, no studies, nothing will come into use, only his grace. And finally, I come to in our own days, in the life of Sri Ramakrishna, we have another beautiful mother, Gopalir Ma, she was called as. A little bit, I would like to deal with this because it is such a beautiful thing. Gopalir Ma was a child widow, and she lived in a temple near on the banks of river Ganga. The temple was owned by a landlady who was also a widow, and she had like-minded ladies both well. So she had allowed Gopalir Ma, this Aghormani Devi, her name was, to stay in a room. And she used to look after the service of the temple, and she used to do her spiritual practices. When Gopalir Ma became sufficient, big enough to understand that she's widow and she has no other opportunity to have children, she centered all her love in one, that is the baby Krishna. All her affections were centered on him, and she looked upon God as the child. And this is a very hard practice because you don't have any support. If you look upon God as a teacher, as a master, you can ask help from him at the time of your difficulty in your sadhana. But what will you ask for a baby? It depends upon you. So you have no other support. But the hardest spiritual practice actually this is. You have no other strength other than your own aspiration. Your aspiration is the only strength. Here, Aghormani Devi was so dedicated. And for 30 years, she had been working hard. and such an austere life she led, and hoping that one day she would be bestowed with the vision of Sri Krishna. And she came to hear about Sri Ramakrishna, a saint at Dakshineshwar. And both this landlady and they went and met him, and Sri Ramakrishna was very pleased to see them. He said, how beautiful. The very face shows that they are devotees. Even the tilak, the devotees of God, they put a tilak. Even the tilak is so beautiful. Their hands and feet and everything. See the observation of Sri Ramakrishna. The bhakti could manifest there. So graceful, so full of love, and so tender their face was. So anyway, Sri Ramakrishna was very happy. He gave them some instructions and sent. And I don't think the landlady came again because she had the social obligations, family and all that. She was a landlady. See, wealth also is an obstruction. But whereas this Aghormani Devi had nothing, so she often used to visit. And as soon as she would come, Sri Ramakrishna would say, what did you bring for me to eat? And poor lady, she would wonder, I'm poor lady, I don't have anything. And this saint, whenever I come, he's asking for me to eat. Then Sri Ramakrishna said, why do you spend money on all this? You make some coconut balls. You know the famous coconut balls of our Sarada Mutt? That's his recipe. So you make some coconut balls and keep and bring them now and then a couple of balls. So this way she was coming and going now and then for 3 months. Then one day, as usual every day, she used to get up at 2 o'clock, attend to her physical cleanliness, hygiene, and then she would sit for meditation by 3 to 6 continuous japa meditation on God. And finally, she got up. Before getting up, she did some pranayama, and she was about to offer the fruits of her japa to her Ishta, her chosen deity. At that time, she saw Sri Ramakrishna sitting next to her. Goodness, how did he come at this part of the time? She was surprised. She was, am I hallucinated? Is he real? So, trusting on her strength, she just touched his hand. Immediately, the person of Sri Ramakrishna vanished, and instead came the wonderful, beautiful form of Sri Krishna, some 10, 11 years months. Baby, baby Krishna is always posed as he's crawling with one hand on the floor, the other raised, and as if asking for something to munch. So the baby started crawling. Just imagine, the lady says, I screamed at the top of my voice. I couldn't believe. Thank God no one was there. She was the only person living there. If not, there would have some dacoits have come and people would have rushed and come. She says she couldn't believe her eyes. That wonderful boy, like a blue gem, was crawling towards her. And he climbed on her and on her and hugged her. She thought it was real. See, this is not a cock and bull story. This was a fact. It was her experience. And pulled the japmala. Now, who is going to do japa? He is the object of our meditation is right in front. And the little boy asked, give me this, something to eat. And poor lady, she said, my darling, I have nothing to eat. Give. I'm a poor lady. And she got those 2 coconut balls. And he started nibbling it. And he spent some time around, and then she was just waiting for the dawn. As soon as it was a little bit bright in the sky, she wanted to go to Sri Ramakrishna, and this one climbed on her. And she says, I walked 3 miles carrying Gopal, that is Gopal means baby Krishna. And I could see one of her hand is under his buttocks, the other on his back. And she says, I could see the little ruby chubby pink feet of Sri Krishna dangling under my breast. And she walked. She was not conscious, but through habit, she was always coming in that road. She came. She was not at all aware of anything, but somehow she came there. By around 7 o'clock, she was there. Another devotee of Sri Ramakrishna was then cleaning the house. She said, I heard a familiar voice calling Gopal, Gopal. And then she sees this Aghormani Devi is there, holding like this. No one could see, only she is seeing. And Sri Ramakrishna saw. And the little boy, she came and sat on the floor. And she said, Gopal, see, my Gopal has revealed himself to me. And there, he is going into you. there Gopal is coming. So like this, the whole day. And Sri Ramakrishna was sitting on the cot and just seeing her. He said, look, she is fully immersed in the bliss of Sri Krishna. So he looked after her the whole day, fed her, and evening, she went back carrying her boy. And at night, poor lady, she just puts a mat and she sleeps. She doesn't have even a pillow. And this little boy was grumbling, it's itching. He's saying, it's itching. I can't sleep because there is no soft pillow. Then the lady said, oh, my darling, today you sleep on my hand and tomorrow morning I'll go to the landlady's daughter and get a soft pillow for you. For today, my child, come to my arms. And he slept on her. Like this, 2 months, uninterrupted vision of Sri Krishna, the baby, she had. And slowly her vision started reducing. And she was panicking. What's wrong? What did I do? Then she went to Sri Ramakrishna and asked him. And he said, look, in this age, if one has this type of vision continuously, the body will not stay. The nerves cannot stand the stress of this. So, but this body of yours has to remain for the world. You will be an example. People will learn that such unselfish, one-pointed, intense aspiration to God can bring the results. So you will be an example. So that is why these visions are reduced. But whenever you want, you can. Yes, whenever she wanted, she could see the baby Krishna, and she had enjoyed the bliss. And like this, she spent quite some time. And Sri Ramakrishna was such a man, he used to enjoy the fun. He had a disciple, we all know, Narendra, the intellectual, rational follower of formless aspect, and who would even criticize Sri Ramakrishna's visions. He would say, it's all your hallucinations, your makeup. Sri Ramakrishna would say, hey, I see God. God speaks to me. Then Naren would say, oh, those things happen. It's an imagination. So such was he. And one day when Naren was there, as they used to call him Naren. So later he became Swami Vivekananda. So when Naren was there in Dakshineshwar, this Aghormani Devi came, and Sri Ramakrishna wanted to have some fun. Now let me see what this intellectual giant will tell about this lady. So he called her, come on, you tell your experience to this boy. She said, won't it do any harm to me? Because generally, your spiritual experiences are not to be divulged to anybody. If you go on telling everybody, its intensity will go away. So that's what Sri Ramakrishna had warned her. So she wanted to make sure that no harm is done. He said, no problem, you can tell. So she started speaking about her vision, the days of austerity, everything. And as she would narrate, she would ask, my boy, is it all right? Is it correct? Am I being fooled? You see, I'm an ignorant woman. I do not know anything. Are my visions true? And Narendra, the intellectual giant that he was moved to tears. He would say, no, mother, it's all true. Your visions are real. You have been blessed by Sri Krishna. Here he can oppose Sri Ramakrishna, but not the sincerity and the simplicity of the lady. So for the grace of Sri Krishna to be on us, all we need is sincerity, purity, intense aspiration, and undivided love to his holy feet. With this, we are sure one day or the other day we will be blessed by his grace, that infinite love, the joy that he is.
Thanks very much, Sridharaprana. That wonderful talk makes us reflect on these modern times where, by being too rational, too cynical, we cut ourselves off from the magical and the mystical. So it's nice to hear about these spiritual experiences that people have had throughout history, and reminding us we need to get back in touch with that and not be too enamored of this very rational external world and missing the magic that's there behind it, within it. So this concludes our celebration of Sri Krishna's birthday. Thank you very much for joining us. For our members, we would hope you will rejoin us later today, in fact at 1:30, for our annual general meeting. And for everybody, you're most welcome to attend next Friday night, the fortnightly Bhagavad-Gita class come discussion. We're in the 6th chapter, the yoga of meditation. So we'll continue going through that. And next Sunday, Gayatri Ji will give her monthly talk on the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. And in the meantime, please stay safe and well. I know for many of you, you're also caught up in this extended lockdown in Sydney and environs. Very strange and strained circumstances we find ourselves in. But I'm sure we're going to emerge from it all. And wonderful to see everybody queuing up to get vaccinated. That's our only way out of this. So I do hope you're progressing with that well, with the vaccination process. So once again, thanks for joining us. And we'll see you next Friday night, next Sunday, and so on.